So let's get started on round 2 here, guys, and see who else we have on our docket here. We'll go reverse this time. I'll start it off, and then I'll hand it to you, James, and then Avi can finish off here. So the second name on my list here that I'm really excited for him to be more involved, and I think for him it just comes down to health rather than just having a bigger role in the team. He's going to have a big role if he plays more. This is Mark Williams for the Charlotte Hornets. Center here that has, I think, immense potential here. He's only 22 years old, but the problem is he's only played 62 games in total in 2 seasons. And he only played 19 last season before a back injury flared up, knocked him out, and he basically didn't play again after, maybe a quarter of the way through the season. So if he can really get on the court and play at least the minutes he played last year, which, he was about 26 minutes a game, he might be a Robert Williams type of player to where he never plays super heavy minutes because of first the injury history and second just the overall conditioning. Maybe he doesn't ever play 35 plus, but even if he can get to upper 20s to 30, I think he can have a real serious impact for the Hornets. You look at their point guard play with LaMelo, that's already there. Brandon Miller as an emerging wing, you have him in the fold for a long time. And then Mark down low, just being insane on the boards. Like he was approaching 10 rebounds per game last season and under 30 minutes played. He is, without a doubt, probably one of the best young rebounders, along with Jalen Duren for Detroit. You look at what those guys could do on the boards to just give second chances for their teams. It's really impressive. And then, of course, playing with a guy like LaMelo, it's just going to enable him just to be spoon-fed those opportunities. And then, of course, with Brandon Miller, and then, they made some moves, Seth Curry, to give themselves a little bit more spacing. I think can definitely make things easier on him, just being a perfect pick and roll partner with LaMelo. So, for next season, I really expect him. I hope that he can play more games. And then it's just kind of expanding on what's already been there in short spurts. But if he can really play 50 to 60 games, if not more, then I think it kind of really solidifies himself as a core piece of the future of the Hornets. And then I kind of forgot about this until I looked at the total rotation on Basketball Reference, but they actually brought in Taj Gibson as a veteran presence. And obviously he's not going to play hardly at all. I wouldn't expect that, but he's probably one of the best vets that you can find to just kind of be on the bench and say, this is how you're a pro. This is how it's done. This is how you stick around a long time. I've been in the league for 15, 16 years. So for Mark, having that guy in the fold, I think is going to help him immensely. And just kind of figuring out how to stay on the floor. If there's a guy next to you that's played for a long time, he knows how to get your body in the right place to where you can play for a long time. So I see Mark as a guy that has demonstrated that he can be a centerpiece center, but he just needs to be on the court more consistently, and then just kind of take more advantage of the fact that he's super efficient in the 60s total percentage from the field, 63, 64%. And then he just has a perfect running mate. They just need to be on the floor together, which is what we haven't really seen to this point. So that's my second player. Curious to hear what you guys think, but I think Mark is someone we forget about sometimes just because he hasn't really been on the floor that much in his career.
Yeah, I dig. I mean, I didn't forget about him. I didn't have him on my list, but that was more because I didn't want to jinx it. We've just barely seen this guy play in the NBA. And
That's fair. That's fair.
Between him and LaMelo, it's just come on. The Hornets have had more talent than their record has suggested the last couple of years. I think they're going to be a trendy pick from nerds like us to overperform what their over under is, just because people just assume they have no talent. And then you look at the roster, it's actually, you can put together a pretty decent rotation here. And Williams, I think, could potentially be both a driver of and a beneficiary of this being just a more normal, competent basketball team next year, with a full complement of players who should be playing NBA minutes in the rotation. But again, we just have to see it. We just have to see him stay on the court, because when he has been on the court, he's been productive, and I would say on both ends. He's been basically what he was advertised as defensively before the draft, and then offensively, I think he's probably been a little better just in terms of his hands and his finishing and that stuff. I've really liked the fairly limited amount of Mark Williams that I've seen in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel the same. I love Mark Williams. I liked him coming to the draft, and then watching with LaMelo, it was one of those moments where going into the draft, I felt Mark Williams would do really well with a point guard like LaMelo. Then going into the season and going into his rookie year, I was like, oh, just let me see this happen. Please let this be as good as I think it's going to be. And then it was exactly as I hoped it would be. Like those two have instant chemistry. I feel like LaMelo, especially in his rookie year when he was still having to deal with I think it was Cody Zeller and Mason Plumlee off the top of my head, that they're not quite the same level of vertical spacer where they can easily get off the ground the same way Mark Williams can. And he's a naturally, I think, a pretty good screener, which I feel like a lot of young bigs struggle with.
Mhm.
So I just feel like they have a real kinship for how to play that pick and roll. And I look forward to seeing it for multiple, like the next couple of years. I think in terms of a breakout, I kind of feel like he's mostly a fully formed player. Like defensively, I think obviously you can work on your agility and mobility as a younger big like that who's not necessarily a switch big yet. Like he can definitely work on some of that. You still prefer to play him and drop, even if he has some of those show some of those flashes. He can work on that. But I think the one thing that I would point to that could possibly make him a breakout, up until this point, the Hornets haven't really asked him to shoot the ball at all. But there's always been a couple flashes. You go back to college, you even watch him, I think, his rookie year. There was a couple times when the Hornets would give him the green light to shoot once or twice, and the shot looked pretty decent. And he's an okay free throw shooter too. I'm not saying he's going to become Brook Lopez or anything at some point in his career, but even adding the ability where it's like, hey, not only am I a great vertical big, I have a little bit of that 6 to 10 foot range. I can get you a couple mid range shots, and they'll be like high percentage shots. If he can pull that off, you're looking at a pretty complete big for the most part, and that's like a fulcrum you can build your entire roster around. So
yeah, like if he could just do what like Jared Allen was doing last year, like he took a few jumpers,
Yep,
but it was mostly
exactly.
floaters and that kind of stuff, and the jumper looked fine.
Yeah.
And that was huge. I mean, I thought he took a big step forward.